Yeah, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's KD section. For today's KD, we'll be having Jacob Ijomah to present on state management in Angular. Jacob Ijomah, good morning. You have the floor. You can go ahead.
Please unmute your mic, Mr. Jacob.
You're muted, sir.
All right. Can you not hear me now?
Yeah. Yes, you can hear. You can go ahead.
All right. So, we're looking at state management in Angular. State management is very important in applications. As application grows bigger, and if we ask what could be a state could just be just like a memory that application has. Now, before I break into it, I'll give you this simple illustration. You are all humans here listening to me, and I know you have brains and you have memories, and you can tell what memory has helped you as a human being to do in life and to achieve, and the benefits it has. So in application, it plays an important role, giving an application a sense of ability to remember from one event to the other as users interact with the application. So application state is just a data repository available to all classes. Of course, in a complex app, enterprise app, there's a lot of classes, there's a lot of components inside the application. And those components need data. So that repository makes that data available to all the classes. And the essence of that, of course, is so that your classes, your components in an application can be in sync. When I mean sync, the data that they need is maintained and sustained, and those that need a particular part of that particular type of data has that type of data to the latest version or to the latest update. So that memory plays an important role, and that's what we regard as application state. Just keeping a memory, ability to remember, let them just remember, and that cannot happen except there is a storage also. So application state management is just a process of maintaining knowledge of an application, the inputs across multiple related data flows. If you interact with some applications, you will notice that if you go to your Facebook page on the browser, you discover that there are a lot of parts to the Facebook page. You find a post, of course, there's a place that's for profile, that's for notifications, that's for comments, and there are all these. And all these are fetching data from different points. And of course, you may need to type comments and order, view other people's comments, and you submit, it synchronizes. And while it's doing that, the other part of the application, the other web page as well, is a different thing entirely, and it's not, the data flow is not entering into all those ones, and memory is sustained. So that's what application state management helps. It brings a lot of benefits to application. In fact, when it grows, according to history, some years ago, Facebook faced the issue before they were able to go ahead to use the Redux state management library to be able to solve their problem. So these are some of the benefits. Predictability makes our application to be predictable and gives us a decoupled architecture, just like I mentioned on the Facebook page or some of the web pages. different pages are different parts of the pages are different and working separately. It gives a decoupled architecture and it's quite testable. And these are the libraries that play this important role. Of course, Redux, that's what Facebook uses. It works powerfully with React applications. Then the NgRx also works with the Angular application. So this is one of the powerful and beauty of state management, apart from the one I've mentioned to you, this ability to undo and redo. You can know what this feature, a problem it can solve for you if you interact with the application or you are doing your typing, whether in MS Word or Microsoft Google Docs or whichever application. I know that you have the power to undo your mistakes and all that. So the application keeps a memory of your previous action and it keeps it there. And you want to, at least for some reasonable amount of time. Then when you find you're making a mistake and you want to undo, fine. You want, oh, my mistake, oh, I made a mistake. You went back. Oh, I didn't make a mistake actually. You can go forward as well. So that is the power of state management and that's the beauty. So in NgRx, it works, they will have the same key concept. And if you drive down to NgRx in particular, it's just a powerful library, organizing and managing state interaction in an Angular application. We still use the Redux pattern as well. So they work hand in hand. And look at, so these are the key concepts. Number one, there must be a store. Of course, there must be a store, a repository, a warehouse where those data have to be stored, fetched from, and there are actions, reducers, and selectors and effects. And these are the key concepts that are essential when you want to manage state in an application. Number one, the store. Your application state is maintained, of course, in the store, in the repository, and it's immutable. Then quickly move to the reducer. These are just functions that takes your current state. It takes two things as parameter, actions and current state. What is the current state? What is the action that you perform? We'll pass it to as an argument to the function, and it gives us a new state. And the old state is kept. Peradventure, you want to revoke. So in other words, state, this is just an arrow function you are seeing there. State, comma, action in bracket, then the arrow function gives us a new state, which is the new state actually can be a code of blocks in curly braces, but this is just an arrow function in a simple format for it. All right, then move to actions. These are actions, of course, they are events that can be dispatched from a component or service. And for those that may not be too familiar with this word, component and service, they are not just as simple as you see them sound. A component can be a form of like a big structure, a building, to put in conceptualization, a building that's where you are living in right now can be a component. And the service, the power supply in your house now is a service. And there are some actions you perform in that house, and there are some services you use. The same thing applies when it comes to application. So actions that perform within a component are unique events actually that happen. All right, then selectors are pure functions used to select and derive, compose pieces of states, just compose them and have them for the application. And of course, when those are composed, it needs to be kept somewhere, which is the store. And then finally, there are effects. Effects are very important when implementing that and trying to manage state in application, because you live in a house and you want to make use of the service from the power supply, national grid. You have to perform an action. Actually, it's action produce effects. When you switch on your light in your house, of course, you discover that there will be an effect. There will be a lightning effect that everywhere is brighten up and all that. So when actions are performed, effects result. You can put it again in another concept, ripple effect. You can throw a stone into your water, and if you don't throw a stone, there won't be an effect of ripple. And so as actions happen, there could be ripples. And some of these effects can come as a result of API calls as well. It can be asynchronous side effects in an application. I didn't go a bit technical to pull out some code and all that to display to you, but the concept is what we are just diving at today. So these are effects that result from the actions that users perform or API calls or the actions that are performed by the application itself. All right, so in summary, managing state becomes a necessity as the application grows. And that is just the summary. Then in conclusion, state management empowers the application to what? To remember. Very, very important. Bringing our human concept into it. And once that is done, once the application has the ability to remember, it improves users' experience a lot. And also, of course, enterprise app can become successful when there's a good user experience. So thank you everybody for listening. I don't know if you have any question for me. You can ask your questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Ijomah Jacob. Lovely presentation. I have a question actually. Okay. I don't know if I don't know how to put it, but I'll just ask it that way. You talked about services. Can you dwell more on that? Can you just explain further? And the reason I'm asking is that it's I know okay, I'm not too sure, but I think you can actually build an application without adding services, like ingesting services into your program. So I just want you to explain more on services, basically.
Okay, thank you very much. Services, just like I said earlier, that of course in architectures and application architecture these days, we can have components, we can have services. Now, it depends on your understanding of a service. We can build the application with service. Services are very important because if you look at it this way, if you have components in an applications, now you could want to do and call some endpoints in an application. For separation of concerns, having components and having services can come from like you make an API call to a third party, make an API call, trying to pull data and all that. That is a work on its own. And actually you can do that work inside your component. But the place where services will not come, where you have to make use of services and separate it from your component, when you have API calls to make and you have a huge application, neglecting services as a separate part of the application itself and doing most of the work inside your component and leaving out that can make your maintenance very tedious, and it could cause a lot of issues for you when you want to maintain your app. Trying to have, when you have about 150 components in an application and the services that will serve this 150 components, you are doing the code, the API calls, the endpoints you are calling inside each of the components. And eventually the component just need that one service, one endpoint to call. And you are now executing the same code in 150 components. It becomes tedious when you want to maintain. What if the endpoint, these API providers, changes their parameter or make some update? You now see that you have to now make some changes in those components, 150 components. Meanwhile, it could just be slash resources or slash books that they change in their path. Now, making those changes in 150 components because you didn't make use of services separately. You called the application, the endpoint inside the component. Now you have to do one job in 150 components separately. But when you make use of services and separate them from the component entirely, maintenance becomes easy. It's not a nightmare. You just do it on one, you make your changes in one piece of code, and those use it to serve the component actually. So just as names imply, is a service, it serves the component. So it is necessary in applications and all that. And possibly if you are not separating, maybe it's the application you are building presently, or when you are working, maybe it's a small application, not a big one. But when you face a big one, you will discover that the need for services to be separate and to use it and separate from component becomes too necessary. Too necessary. So Patrick, I don't know that I have assisted you in the response.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
All right.
Mr. Jacob, sorry, my question is, does it mean that you said surfaces in an Angular component is like you use an analogy of power supply,
a power
supply and all that. Does it mean that now if you want to create some kind of call, like you want to create a kind of data binding stuff, does it mean that necessarily you need services? Because it's just like that. Because now
if you're binding data, it's not it depends on where your data is coming from. If your data is coming from the API you are calling, definitely the service have to, if the service handles that, then you need to pull the data from the services into the component where you need it. So if you want to bind data from the, but I said if you are binding data within component to component and all that.
Okay.
And the concept, I usually use this concept to explain these services when it comes. Now in our houses these days in Nigeria, that's not what it's supposed to be. Power supply, everybody is taking care of his power supply, either by having generator in our houses and all that, and hotels are having generator and all that. But of course, in a well-organized society, it's not supposed to be so. It creates pollution, of course, and a lot of noise pollution, air pollution, and all that. But the place where there's the serving power grid, power supply is in a central place, and it serves the whole houses in a street and all that. It makes everything better. Rather than each house having generator, each house having generator, it doesn't. It's just repetition of things, and a governor or whatever, a state management into that and all that has control and can provide all those things. It's not. It should go for having it as a standalone stuff and serve the whole of the houses and all that. So that is usually the illustration I use for services to really pass it across so that people will understand it very well. So please, is there any other question?
Thank you.
Does anybody have another question for Mr. Jacob Ijomah? Okay. If there are no questions, Mr. Ijomah, thank you so much for presenting today.
Thank you, Patrick.